What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, September 23rd, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 18:17 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the Middle East. So things are really heating up in the Middle East between Israel and Hezbollah. If you remember last week, Israel detonated thousands of pagers belonging to Hezbollah operatives, and they caused 4,000 Hezbollah operatives to be seriously injured. They placed explosive materials in the batteries of these pagers, which were manufactured in Taiwan, and then they waited for the right moment to detonate all these pagers. And originally, the Israeli plans were to do this massive pager detonation right before they invade Lebanon and go after Hezbollah, but they had to prematurely detonate those pagers because some of the agents in Hezbollah suspected that those pagers were rigged with explosives, so they prematurely detonated them. But it does appear that Israel is on the verge of invading Lebanon and going after Hezbollah, trying to wipe them out just like they did with Hamas. So last night and this morning, Israel has conducted massive airstrikes on Hezbollah. Since this morning, the Israeli Air Force has struck more than 1,100 Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, the IDF said today. IDF fighter jets and drones launched more than 1,400 munitions at the Hezbollah targets, which according to the IDF included buildings and other sites where Hezbollah had stored rockets, missiles, launchers, and drones that posed a threat and were intended to have been used against Israel. Okay, so massive airstrikes by Israel on Hezbollah this morning and late last night, over 1,100 targets, guys. That is insane. And this comes just like 2 days after Israel launched a preemptive strike on some rocket launchers. I think it was like about 100 or so that were getting ready to launch rockets at Israel. But now they've stepped it up and they've struck over 1,100 targets, guys. Do you know what this means? Combined with the pager detonation last week, this is all preparations for a ground invasion into southern Lebanon to push Hezbollah away from the Israeli border so that northern Israel is no longer within rocket range of Hezbollah. I think we're going to see it at the end of this week, possibly next week. Okay, we're going to see the air campaign first, and then we're going to see the ground invasion. Now, a couple of days ago, I shared footage with you guys of some Merkava battle tanks being moved to northern Israel. So I do believe that this ground invasion is going to start sometime in the coming days and probably not more than a month or two. But I do believe they're going to wait for the UN General Assembly to finish this week before they make any kind of drastic move. But in the coming days during the General Assembly, Israel is going to continue these strikes. And then after the assembly is over, I think we're going to see a big invasion of Lebanon, which is going to completely set the Middle East on fire. Iran is going to get involved, and potentially Iran is going to launch their massive, long-awaited counterattack on Israel. Once Israel goes into Lebanon, maybe that's when Iran is going to finally launch their counterattack that we've all been waiting for. We'll have to wait and see. Also, after the General Assembly wraps up this weekend, I'm very concerned that Ukraine is going to launch a massive shock and awe style deep strike on Russia. Okay, Ukraine has already sent a list of targets to the United States that they want to strike with Western weapons, Western cruise missiles in particular, the JSAM missiles, which have a range of 500 miles, which is well within the range to reach Moscow. So Ukraine has American missiles that can reach Moscow and beyond. Okay, what happens if Ukraine uses these JSAM missiles and they start hitting targets around Moscow, or maybe they try to go after Putin himself and they try to assassinate him or take out the Russian leadership? Okay, that could be grounds for a nuclear war. Okay, so, I want Ukraine to win, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to cause an escalation. Okay, Ukraine launching a massive deep strike is going to cause escalation, and Ukraine is going to have to do a massive coordinated strike. It's not going to be some little strike where they hit, point targets like they've been doing the last few months. They hit one ammunition depot here, maybe some base over there. It's not going to be that way, because in order for these deep strikes to be effective, for them to be able to penetrate Russian airspace, they have to saturate the Russian air defenses to overwhelm it. So they're going to have to do a massive shock and awe style attack that's going to involve maybe hundreds of drones first to confuse the air defenses and saturate them. And then they're going to send in maybe 100 or 200 cruise missiles hitting various targets deep inside of Russia, 200, 300, 400 miles away from the Ukrainian border. I think they're going to go after the bomber bases where Russia keeps their bombers to strike Ukraine. They might go after electronic warfare sites. They may go after VIP bunkers and VIP locations. So get prepared, guys. This is all going to happen right around the same time, okay? Ukraine doing this massive coordinated deep strike on Russia, hitting potentially dozens and dozens of targets with over 200 American and NATO missiles. And at the same time, Israel's going to push into Lebanon, potentially all the way to Beirut. We'll have to wait and see. Iran could jump in and then attack Israel. And guess what? NATO is going to have to get involved in this one if Israel goes into Lebanon, because Iran and Hezbollah have already threatened to attack Cyprus if there's a war, and Israel uses the air bases in Cyprus to launch attacks on either Iran or Lebanon. Then Iran and Hezbollah are going to target Cyprus, and Cyprus is half Greek and half Turkish, okay? So if they hit Cyprus, NATO's going to get involved. Article 5 will be invoked, and NATO's going to go down into the Middle East and annihilate Hezbollah and potentially try to denuclearize Iran and decapitate the leadership and change the regime in Iran. So this could really spiral out of control, because then Russia would get involved if NATO tries to do that to Iran. So this could really escalate things. You guys have to get prepared. Make sure you have a nuclear war survival plan. Make sure you have a fallout shelter you can get to within 15 minutes of your primary residence or your job. Also, make sure you have a bug out bag. But this is really getting out of control, and I want to just let you guys know that I'm back in the United States today. So I will continue to monitor these situations in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe and update you guys as necessary. And there's now reports of large amounts of people in southern Lebanon evacuating due to fears of a full-on invasion by Israel. There's actually pictures coming out on Twitter showing massive traffic jams as people try to flee southern Lebanon. And for the first time in a recent address, IDF chief spokesman Daniel Hagari issued a broad warning to the general public in southern Lebanon that if they have not already moved away from houses and civilian buildings, they must now leave those areas. So this is a huge sign that Israel is going to be stepping up their airstrikes on southern Lebanon. They're asking civilians to move away from houses and civilian buildings because Hezbollah is hiding out in those buildings because they know that Israel does not strike civilian targets, so they're taking advantage of that. And Israeli Channel 12 in Israel is reporting that the wave of attacks that the IDF launched this morning in southern Lebanon is a new phase in the fight against Hezbollah. The attacks were aimed at Hezbollah launch sites, but they are unusual in scope and intensity and will probably continue to escalate. Okay, so that's what Israeli Channel 12 is saying, citing their sources. And major breaking news coming in today from the U.S. The U.S. is deploying troops to the Middle East, according to the Pentagon. According to U.S. officials, this is contingency planning for a possible evacuation of U.S. personnel or civilians from Lebanon, as well as force adjustments in the Middle East. Okay, that is absolutely huge. And there's been a noticeable increase in C-17 flights departing from Fort Campbell, potentially indicating the activation of the 101st Airborne. And I'll show you guys a bunch of these C-17 flights out of Fort Campbell. So this would mean that the 101st Airborne is gearing up to deploy to the Middle East. And the U.S. Embassy has urged Americans to leave Lebanon immediately, warning of increasing risks as Israel intensifies airstrikes. So U.S. Embassy urging Americans to leave Lebanon immediately, and they're now sending troops to the Middle East, okay, probably the 101st Airborne, to evacuate people and personnel. And Lebanon's health ministry reports that the death toll from today's airstrikes by Israel in southern Lebanon has climbed to 356 dead and 1,246 wounded, guys. That is insane. And Israeli fighter jets and British Eurofighter Typhoons have been arriving in Cyprus in large numbers since last night's massive strikes on Hezbollah, according to local spotters. This could mean that Britain is preparing to strike Hezbollah and Iran if Hezbollah and Iran attack Cyprus, as they have threatened to do before, which would invoke Article 5, since British and NATO planes are based in Cyprus. So this is very serious, guys. And the Israeli government has announced the declaration of a special emergency situation throughout all of Israel for the next week. The Jordanian Civil Aviation Authority has announced that all flights between Amman and Beirut have been suspended. That's Amman, Jordan, the capital of Jordan, and Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. Flights between them suspended. There's been a massive attack on Haifa, Israel by Hezbollah today. Haifa is the port city in northwest Israel on the Mediterranean. We have reports of large impacts at the Haifa University. There were also rocket sirens in at least 51 areas in northern Israel today. And a senior Israeli official said, "This is just the promo. We have tens of thousands of more targets." Wow. Tens of thousands of more targets, guys. So they're saying this is just the intro. This is just the warm-up. That is crazy, guys. And the Iranian foreign minister threatened that Iran will attack Israel along with Hezbollah, saying, quote, "We will not remain indifferent and we will stand by the Palestinian and Lebanese people." And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu commented on the possibility of assassinating the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. He said, quote, "Everyone is in the crosshairs." Wow. So crazy situation in the Middle East, guys. It's really escalating. Make sure you have everything you need. Make sure you have a bug out bag. Make sure you have a fallout shelter nearby. Make sure you have a nuclear war survival plan. Most of all, make sure that you're getting right with Jesus Christ, because you could have all the preps in the world and it's not going to help you get to heaven. Okay, we're all going to die someday, and at some point we're going to have to meet God, and the way you've lived in your life is going to determine where you go for eternity. So get right with God. This is very concerning. We have this RC-135 Combat Sentinel that flew from London to Crete last night. Now, these Combat Sentinel planes are used to collect intelligence and reconnaissance and surveillance on high priority targets for the Pentagon and the President. They send the information directly to the President. We only have 2 of these planes in the entire Air Force. So if one of them is deployed somewhere, it means something very important is going on. and the president and the Pentagon want to have a closer look at it. The last couple of weeks, this plane was deployed to Poland and the Baltics and to Northern Europe, where it was flying up to the Kola Peninsula, where Russia has most of their nuclear-armed subs, and it was keeping an eye on Russia's nuclear posture, trying to see how many Russian boomers were in base or out at sea. And then it was also flying in Poland, patrolling the border of Poland and Russia and the border of Poland and Belarus and up into the Baltics. But they've moved it now to the Middle East, which means that the U.S. is preparing for something serious. Okay, if they took that plane out of the Eastern European theater, which is very hot right now and could pop off at any time as well, and they're moving it to the Middle East, that means they're expecting something to go down. And we also had a U.S. Navy sub-hunter active in the Eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Lebanon. Here you can see this P-3 Orion doing loops here off the coast of Beirut. And this afternoon, we had more B-52 nuclear bombers airborne over the United States. We had 2 of them flying over Alabama and Arkansas and Mississippi. And actually, one of them got aerially refueled by a KC-135 Stratotanker that came down from Buffalo, New York, and met one of the B-52s in midair near western Tennessee. So our nuclear forces are still on very high alert. We're still seeing several B-52s airborne every single day. We also had a lot of activity off the coast of Southern California the last couple of days, and that activity is continuing today. We also had 4 sub-hunters off the coast of Florida near Orlando. Here you can see 3 of them performing what appears to be some kind of search grid. You can see here, based on the loops they're doing, that they're performing a broad search grid here just to the east of Orlando. 4 of them doing this search grid here. So something is parked in this area, potentially a Russian sub or Chinese sub, most likely a Russian sub. Very, very concerning to see 4 of them here. Okay, that is extremely unusual. We also had some aerial refuelers off the northeast coast of the U.S., which is not too common. We had one KC-135 come down from Pittsburgh and go all the way out into the Atlantic here, probably about 300 miles off the coast of Virginia. And it was hanging out there for a while. Then there was another refueler that came from Maine and went down towards Cape Cod. So they were definitely refueling some very important planes here off the coast of the northeastern U.S. They could be sub-hunters. They could be nuclear war command and control planes, doomsday planes. We don't know. There was also a doomsday plane that went from Georgia to Offutt Air Base. And we had more reconnaissance activity over Poland and the Baltics. Here you can see a NATO reconnaissance plane doing dozens and dozens of loops here in the Baltic Sea. And we also had an Italian AWACS plane flying over Latvia and Estonia, patrolling the border with Russia here. And then there was also a U.S. Army high priority VIP plane that flew from Ramstein to Poznań, Poland. Now, right outside of Poznań, Poland is the Powice Air Base, which has all of the highest value planes in NATO's inventory in this area of Poland, western Poland, right outside of Poznań. So this is very concerning that a U.S. Army high priority VIP plane went from Ramstein to probably the Powice Air Base. That is a huge red flag. And here we have some more NATO reconnaissance over Poland and the Baltics. Here you can see Jake 17 and RC-135 rivet joint that did a complete loop around Kaliningrad. And then there was a NATO AWACS plane here in northwest Poland. So very concerning, guys. And here's a picture of a traffic jam in southern Lebanon. You can see all these cars, all these people trying to get out of southern Lebanon in anticipation of this massive invasion that's about to take place by Israel. And then here you can see all these C-17s leaving Fort Campbell and going over to Germany, to Ramstein. And this could be the contingent of U.S. troops that are going down to the Middle East to prepare to evacuate civilians and various types of U.S. government and U.S. military personnel in the Middle East if things get crazy. And NATO fighter jets were scrambled to intercept 5 Russian military aircraft flying over the Baltic Sea without flight plans or transponders. The Latvian Air Force confirmed on Saturday the Russian planes were identified on 2 separate occasions on Friday and Saturday, prompting a rapid response from NATO's Baltic Air Policing mission. According to the Latvian Air Force, the Russian jets were detected flying in international airspace near the Baltic states, but had not activated their transponders, an electronic control system that helps maintain safe air control. Transponders just like a locator beacon so other planes can see where you're flying so you don't collide midair. And the scramble involved Eurofighter Typhoons stationed in Latvia, which intercepted and escorted the Russian aircraft. The German Air Force, which participates in NATO's Baltic Air Policing mission, identified the planes as a group of 5 Russian jets, 1 Sukhoi 35 and 4 Sukhoi 30s. So if you guys are not familiar, the Baltic countries don't have their own fighter jets, their own air force. So they're reliant on Germany, Poland, and the UK to patrol their airspace and make sure that Russia doesn't violate it. So 5 Russian fighter jets flying near the Baltic countries with their transponders turned off. Guys, that is very, very concerning. And Latvia said that its Air Force, in collaboration with NATO allies, has increased airspace monitoring after an incident earlier in September when a Russian Shahed drone invaded its airspace. The Shahed drone, equipped with an explosive, crashed in the Goglava parish in Latvia's Rezekne district on September 7th. According to the Latvian Armed Forces, the drone had entered the country from Belarus and was believed to be on its way to a target in Ukraine before it veered off course and crashed. Guys, that's a bunch of BS, okay? If Russia's sending drones at Ukraine, why would they send it towards Latvia? Okay, drones don't veer off course that much. Latvia is literally like the opposite side of Russia. Okay, Latvia is like 1,000 miles to the north. That is just a BS story that NATO made up to prevent panic, and they think that people are so stupid that they're going to believe this story. Okay, what happened here was Russia sent an Iranian explosive drone into Latvia 50 miles, guys. This drone flew for 50 miles into Latvia and then supposedly crashed. That's what NATO is saying, but we don't know the true story. Okay, did NATO have to shoot it down? There's just no information about it other than that it flew into Latvia 50 miles and supposedly crashed intact with the warhead intact. You know, it's just crazy, guys. I mean, you know, this is clearly a sign that Russia is getting ready to invade the Baltics. Okay, they're probing. They're doing these probing attacks. They've already sent, I think, 2 drones into Poland and like 3 missiles into Poland. Now they're sending drones and missiles to the Baltics. They're probing and testing, okay? And Estonian intelligence is saying that the ammunition depot hit by Ukrainian drones and missiles in Russia last week in the Tver region included 30,000 tons of explosives and 750,000 rounds of ammunition. According to Colonel Ants Kivilseg, the ammunition, which had not been stored indoors, was delivered to the depot by train just before the attack was launched. After it, the ammunition in the yard detonated along with the bunkers and depots. There were 30,000 tons of explosive objects and 750,000 rounds of ammunition. On average, the Russian Federation was releasing 10,000 rounds of ammunition per week, so this ammunition supply was intended for 2 to 3 months. Russia has suffered ammunition losses as a result of this attack, and we will see the impact of those losses on the front in the coming weeks. So that's what the colonel in the Estonian intelligence is saying, okay? 30,000 tons of explosives, and there's this crazy video showing these detonations in Russia that literally look like nuclear bombs. Okay, they look like nuclear warheads, massive mushroom cloud with a huge blast wave. Okay, so very, very concerning. This is a massive strike. It really hurt Russia, and Putin is going to be really annoyed by this. It actually caused a 2.8 magnitude earthquake. Okay, the Richter scale recorded a 2.8 magnitude earthquake from that detonation. That is just insane, guys. Okay, so Ukraine hit these explosives or artillery shells, whatever they were, before the Russians could store them inside. Okay, they left them outside while they were transitioning them from the train inside to the warehouse, and they blew up and caused this massive mushroom cloud. Look at that, guys. I mean, how do we know that that wasn't a tactical nuke? You know, we don't know. Just totally insane. Let's just see that again. I mean, this looks just like a nuclear bomb going off. Look at that bright flash, and then you'll see the blast wave. You can see the blast wave there. Just imagine if you're like a Russian civilian and like the person filming this, and you see this massive mushroom cloud going off. I mean, your heart probably is pounding through your chest thinking that nuclear war has started and they're dropping tactical nukes. I mean, you don't know that this was just an ammunition depot that was hit, but for all we know, they could have used tactical nukes. You know, I mean, you know, NATO and Russia and all these countries, they keep a lot of secrets. And the president of Ukraine visited the ammunition plant in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is providing artillery shells for Ukraine. He said it is in places like this where you can truly feel that the democratic world can prevail, thanks to people like these in Ukraine, in America, and in all partner countries who work tirelessly to ensure that life is protected. So very interesting. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with another update. If not, I'll be back tomorrow with more breaking news, and I'm going to be restarting the 24/7 streams. But I am going to be monitoring these events very closely and updating you guys, and I will go live if necessary when Israel invades Lebanon or when Ukraine conducts these massive deep strikes in Russia, which I do believe are going to kick off World War III possibly. So until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.